Welcome to Microsoft SaaS Stories. I'm your host, Jason Young, a curious engineering manager here at Microsoft, and in this episode, we'll be exploring how Octopai embraced a global SaaS model and are providing innovative value to their customers through new AI technologies. Today, I'm here with Zinette Ezra, VP of Products for Octopai. How's it going?
Hi, how's it going, Jason? Nice to meet
Good,
you.
good.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. It's a rainy day here, but it's a nice. I have my coffee, and it's nice and cozy, so we can have a nice coffee chat.
Yes, and from my end, it's a very sunny day, and I have my cup of water just
Perfect.
to stay awake. Yeah. So,
Perfect. Yeah, let's start on what does your company focus on, and let's talk about your products.
so Octopi is a data lineage company. I know that term is not so known in the industry, but this is something that is being established as we speak in the metadata management domain. It's basically, and I'm saying this like a metaphor, imagine that you have a very complex hybrid landscape, a typical enterprise landscape with legacies from 20 years ago, and you have that cloud movement, you want to transform it. You have also side by side, you have the on-prem and you have the cloud, and have lots of systems and lots of data
Mhm.
flowing into your pipelines. And sometimes you need to change something, and then on the downstream, someone will start yelling at you because you broke a report, and a couple of millions are missing from a revenue uh, number, and then someone from the data team needs to fix it. How can you understand what was broken if you don't have a data lineage tool in place like Octopi that knows how to stitch every system, every data flow, starting for the cross systems within a system, then you have an end-to-end asset journey to really trace everything that flows into your pipeline. So this is what we do. And
Mhm.
this is how we create live maps for your entire data landscape to enable you to run with use cases like change management, change impact analysis, root cause, migrations, you name it.
Mm.
It's like your Waze and Google of your data landscape in a
Perfect. Yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah, I've been on the inside at a company like this, at a company that was, had all of these different data sources, and we had to make sense of it. And frankly, it was a mess, right? Like, you're being very,
Exactly.
very polite about it, but everybody's creating databases in different places, and just things change over time. Like you mentioned, over the course of 20 years, and a lot of the meaning gets lost. And I know in my former role, I would have loved to have used a tool like this. It sounds like it would have saved me a lot of time and anxiety for sure. So it sounds like an amazing product.
Right. I can show you just to give you an insight. The first time that a customer will see the live map is overwhelming, astonished, oh my God, and then they're starting with the cleansing project.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Mm.
So what first motivated you to consider a SaaS model?
So back in the days when the company was established, we started as an on-prem actually
Hmm.
for the first month or a year, and then realizing like very quickly that we did a mistake, and said no. In order for us to really scale, and we have customers all over the globe, United States, UK, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and so it's all over the world. So how can you really scale, especially when you start as a startup? With an on-prem product. So we quickly turned around and said we have to move to a software as a service product because otherwise we'll not be able to survive and not be able to serve our customers as we should.
Hmm.
And we started that way because once you're serving the enterprise market, the first thing is the data. No, it's the metadata. Still, it should be on-prem. It should be so you have that irrational fear at first, but down the road, after a few months, we understood that we need to switch, and I think it was the best decision ever made.
Hmm.
Uh, a software as a service.
What a great insight, though, because and a lot of companies go through this, especially at that startup phase, where you're at a fork in the road and you have to figure out, are we going to try to make this work on-prem, or are we going to use a SaaS model? And I think historically people thought that the on-prem model would be so much easier. I think that's shifted. I think people now probably think that
Right.
idea is crazy, but the on-prem model, people don't realize like all of the complexity that goes into that, like managing like even just the installer, and then
Right.
dealing with all of those kinds of support issues, and then potentially even having like an integration team. I've worked at companies where we had an army of integrators that had to go in and actually integrate with all of these different things. So it's such a great insight that you were at that fork in the road, and you saw that the benefits of the SaaS model vastly outweighed the on-prem model.
All right. So who am I to speak as product? I'm not sure what I did beforehand. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember, because
Mm-hmm.
now I have the insights of seeing the customers. You actually can see and observe how they are using the system, and moreover, I can actually provide innovation all the time. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
limited to that. Oh, on-prem once upon a year. Uh, you can
Mm-hmm.
provide that the new feature, right? So it's like an
Mm-hmm.
historical thing that shouldn't happen no more. So of course.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So what does SaaS mean to you then? Like, how do you think about SaaS?
Uh, so a few aspects, and I started to talk about it. So first of all, the ability to enhance the product, to actually not just hearing the voice of the customer, and to actually deliver as we speak more and more value to our customers, and to keep the pace of, let's say, a sustainable pace of innovation. We see that technology is changing all the time. And as we are private customers, we are starting to be very like um, used to the fact that I'm getting updates all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a private consumer, why shouldn't I get the same as a business consumer? I should get the same experience, uh, stay like up to with all the innovations, with all the promises that product made to me as a
Mm-hmm.
customer. But more and from the product perspective is more important than that. It's about scalability.
Mm-hmm.
This is my primary incentive is scalability to serve growing customer install base, the ability to enhance everything in terms of product offerings. And from a business perspective, it's a growth opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is more or less for me, software as a service.
Oh, that's great. So how did you leverage the Microsoft tech stack in all of this?
So I will give you a story because I really researched how the company started. We started years ago with Azure when it was very young.
Mm-hmm.
Then we switched to AWS,
Mm-hmm.
and then we were accepted into a program, like selected like 8 out of hundreds of companies, a program called Scale Up by Microsoft, and then we switched back to Azure. What I can share with you that there was a gap in the time. Now Azure, AWS, and back to Azure. Uh, for us, it was we were astonished by the fact that Azure came to be so mature in such a short period of time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
amazing job. Um, so for us, it was mainly to recreate, and just to give an example, we created everything with microservices, containerized, and in a way that you can scale up so easy. For example, we have customers in US and customers in Europe, and we have requirements from UK customers, especially from the government, to establish one in UK.
Mm-hmm.
And we have requirements from our partners to have a specialized partners site. And same for Australia. In a matter of 1 week, we are able to replicate and create that site, which is amazing. So this is one answer for you. The other answer is something that really happened in the last few weeks, something that I'm very proud of. Gen AI, generative AI. We researched how to approach it, and I came to the conclusion that the best approach is Microsoft Azure OpenAI. And I've reached out to our business manager at Microsoft, and he hooked me up with an amazing team. They are called Azure Fast Track,
Mm-hmm.
and I got the best persons, people, brains that could help us to get Azure OpenAI as part of our product. And we did this in no time. They actually helped us how to navigate it. And we are on, like, the product is alive and it's
Mm-hmm.
working. It's an amazing product using Azure OpenAI. So we couldn't do it without their support. So it's not just a technology, it's how Microsoft is supporting companies, partners to get through, and instead of prolonged periods of research and stumble and limitations and stuff like that. If I wasn't sure about something, I would shoot an email, and like 15 minutes afterwards, I will get a response from a very busy person. I would say, my kids are not responding so fast, seriously, or my husband. So just an insight. So yes, this is the latest
That's
one.
awesome. No, that's really good to hear that you had really good support. And yeah, I mean the platform is moving so quickly, and it's really like a paradigm shift in how people are utilizing these new technologies. So I'm glad to hear that that you're having very quick success. I'm hearing a lot of stories like that, and it's just really exciting. So this almost seems a little boring by comparison, but what is your pricing model?
Um, Actually, there is a segue from the previous answer.
Sure.
Once we got into Azure OpenAI that is priced, consumption based,
Mm-hmm.
it brings a new dimension to our product. It's like,
Mm,
just a second, we are priced as software as a service as a typical tiered pricing. You have the basic, the essentials, right? The advanced, and you have the pro, and you have the enterprise. Same typical packages that you have on one hand, because it's Octopai is regarding coverage of data landscape. Then we are priced on connectivity, right, or
mhm,
on integrations, not necessarily on users. And then you have add-ons, right, products that you can add and be promoted to the next promoted.
mhm,
You can be upgraded to the next package. But now that we have the generative AI, the Azure OpenAI as a service, which is priced consumption based, then I, as a product, need to define how to have this model. Should
mhm,
should we stay with what we have? Should we move
mhm.
to consumption based? How can I cope now with a hybrid pricing model? I'm in that work that you've mentioned point,
Yeah,
and I need to conclude it very fast because now I have an issue. But I think, generally, I think that the consumption-based pricing, service as a service, no, software as a service. Come on, right?
mm,
Uh, it says the next thing that we see that not only Microsoft is going there. I think I see other vendors doing the same, and the typical software as a service pricing is going to go into an evolution because of that. I think we don't have a
yeah.
choice.
That is super insightful. I never thought of that. I mean, it's going to force a reevaluation of pricing models because
Yes.
there's really no choice. And then it brings up a lot of interesting questions, right? Because I suspect that you're going to have varied usage throughout the customers. So it's like, are you going to have 5%, 10% are heavy users and the rest are light users? What is that going to look
I
like?
know, I
Is it
know.
something where it's going to be super spotty as well, where one month you're going to look at your numbers and be like, what, hey, it's around Christmas time, for whatever reason everybody is using additional consumption, and
Yeah.
now our numbers are not looking good for December. It's really
So,
fascinating.
right. So how can you predict that, right? You're expected
Mhm.
to create a forecast. So But you know what? I've mentioned the B2C, the private consumer, and
Mhm.
what happens. But now I'm 25 years in technology and product management for decades, and I'm always seeing that trend of the B2B models following the B2C, like the
Mhm.
private consumers. You're starting to get used to something, and then the enterprises business should follow.
Mhm.
And also the economical dimension that we have to deal today globally, and you have the CFOs being very, defensive on the budget. I think that the consumption-based pricing is a way to effectively and economically manage your business applications in general. So I think we need to um, eventually align to that.
Yeah.
And this is going to be, and it's very interesting how we will see now pricing for software as a service. And any website that you'll go, you'll see like the three pillars, the basic, the professional,
Yep. The
contact us.
table. Yep.
Okay. Now we shall see what will happen next. Just curious,
Right.
like you.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. So, from what you've seen from the evolution of the company to this software as a service model, what were the biggest challenges that you ran into? And do you think that they were mostly business, mostly technical? Was it 50-50?
Um, I think it's 50-50. And
Mm-hmm.
let's dive into an example related to generative AI, to the Azure OpenAI model. Since you have tiered pricing, okay, going back to the
Mm-hmm.
tiered pricing,
Yep.
you have the 3.5 turbo model and you have the GPT-4 model. And the pricing is different. Like the latest is twice as much as
Mm-hmm.
the lower model. And I thought, oh, let's start with the lower model. Let's see adoption, engagement, and we shall see. Maybe we should uh, create a separate pricing for advanced model, and then we'll get paid more, like Azure OpenAI
Mm-hmm.
is in a way forcing us to think. And what happened, and this is a technical one, that I created predefined prompts for very specific answers. Like no way that the answer would be different, being too creative in that sense, without explaining exactly what I've entered in the product. But what happened is that I had to switch totally to GPT-4. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a choice because the other model would give me some partial answers, very creative answers, and the use case was very like narrow, niche specific. No way that you can be creative there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to switch like in the last second. We were like pre-stage, pre-deployment. Now I need to switch. And now imagine me with, oh, just a second. The pricing model that I thought about, I need to throw it away. I
Mm-hmm.
need to recreate it. So it was both technical and business. And the other, another technical complication that I had, and this is very interesting. The typical way to implement a service is you create, you have the studio, and you have the use case, and you have the how to, very simplistic. Uh, you have the server UI, you get the answer. Long story short, imagine that you ask the question, no matter how.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens when you go to OpenAI or, via the Bing, you get the answer, right? You see the answer, start answering.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have the service implemented, we didn't think about it, and we had to wait for the answer to be finished.
Right. I was going to say it comes in word by word, right? That's how the
Right.
API response comes through.
So I'm sitting in front of the application. I'm okay. The answer is not coming. Like 30 seconds. No way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working. So
Mm-hmm.
we realized that we need to create a streaming service on our end. And the way that I've explained this to R&D was, look, this is like a person that you ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking Jason a question. You're not saying, wait 30 seconds. You start talking, right?
Yeah, and then throw the whole thing over.
right? Right. Blah. No,
Yeah.
it's not working like that. So think like a person. So OpenAI, Azure OpenAI is a person. So think about it as a person. It's a different state of mind. So technically, we realize that we've missed a part of it, that it's not just an algorithm, just something and a service that, provides you an answer. So this was another interesting challenge that we had with the Azure OpenAI service.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Is there anything that, as you've gone through this journey, is there anything that you wish you had done differently based on what you know now?
Differently, I would go with the consumption base from no. Differently, I think that I'm not saying that it was the wrong decision to go on-prem. Sometimes you cannot really predict what will happen. But I work for other companies that, and I'm saying like 15 years ago, not at 5 years, 15 years ago, that took the bat and went software as a service from day one. Cloud-based software as a service 15 years ago for the enterprise market. I think that this was a risky thing, but at the end of the game, if I could do that, and then I would go with software as a service from day one. This is one. Second, if I'm looking, let's see.
And on that first point, going software as a service initially, I mean, one thing that I found as I've been interviewing people on the show, different companies, is that the companies that did choose to do that, you think that there would be no friction in that. But the reality is, especially if you're talking 15 years ago, the people you're hiring don't know how to build SaaS. So
now that you mention it, right.
Still going through that. Yeah.
So
you're still going through some pain.
Right. So now that you mention it, this is something that in Octopai I cherish. And it wasn't for other companies I work with, is the way that we work with microservices. That means that the architecture and the way that we deliver is very fast to our customers. And this is something. This is a mindset that the engineers have here. Product has it here, and sometimes the customers have it. What do I mean by that? They know that we can actually provide new features, and we're not wait a month, wait 3 months for that. So in that sense, the mindset is very important on one hand, but the challenge is, for example, with Azure OpenAI feature, okay? It's called Optimize. It's something that we played with. There's Octopai and Optimize, and we have a robot, of course, that couldn't use Copilot. And I said, why not? Because Microsoft will use it, so we cannot. But when we have the ability to go out with an MVP very quickly. The challenge is how to get from the MVP to a mature product. I think that mindset is still problematic. Many are over engineering, or many are going out too soon. And you have, software as a service, typical early adopters, controlled availability, and then you need to start implementing flags for every feature. And this could be a challenge on one hand. On the other, there is no fair answer to say how to really cope with it. So that challenge is still there. Despite the architecture, the mindset, and I'm pointing at me as product. The challenge is still in the product house, how to provide the minimal viable, valuable product in a way that sticks, and then you can quickly form into that mature product. how much time you need to engage with customers, how much feedback that you need to get, and then how do you stop? I'm saying always, I worked with many product managers and say, I think that the fine line between 3 to 5 and to 20 customers feedback is critical, because you can over engineer, and then software as a service is not anymore. You go back to the waterfall thinking.
It sounds like what you're saying is having a flexible um, architecture, I guess I would say, having a flexible architecture sort of gets you 80% of the way there, but we both know that the last 20%, right, can be 80% of the work. So yes, you get this huge boost from having a well-architected application, but then it's all of the business pieces and the customer pieces and just all of the things that it takes to actually push a product across the finish line.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that, and then now I'm thinking about that will change also, and I'm saying this as a product manager. The generative AI is really it's changing everything.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I was finally saying, oh, I don't have to ask the customers about a product feature anymore within that context, because they don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm expected now to invent features and then bring it to customers and ask them, what can you do with it, or what will be the next phase? So it's a different mindset. So it's not even the architecture, the typical software as a service delivery is experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gen AI has actually changed the mindset. For example, search is dead, right? We're saying
Mm-hmm.
search is dead. I myself, I don't know how to go to Google search for something. It sounds to me like stupid. I'm used to ask a question, right? So same as before, we'll see more and more business users expecting the same for a product. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot just search for something. I'm expecting to ask a question, or the system should be proactive and provide me with an actionable insight, right? So generative AI in that sense is going to change our way to how to produce software as a service, because I'm not saying finally, the customers don't know what to expect. They cannot be prescriptive anymore.
Right.
So they need to actually speak about their problem. So the software as a service per se should provide a solution that is something that is created, invented by a product manager, engineers using generative AI in that sense. So,
Mm-hmm.
right, today the Gen AI hears, now writes, right? You know
Mm-hmm.
that? Writes, hears, and sees everything. So imagine what will be tomorrow. Maybe the application will just be a blank page, no UI, no user interface, nothing.
Yeah.
And you just interact and say, tell me something new about my data landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Create for me a cleansing project with all the duplicates and all the orphans and all the tables that nobody uses, no reports are being used, and that's it.
Or you could just, I mean, even abstracting it further, like, hey, what do I need to take a look at? Like, what do you need human assistance for?
Right,
Like that's
exactly.
the ultimate, right? Like
Right,
where are you hitting your limits? What decisions do I need to make that, you're just not
exactly.
you're not authorized to make on my behalf?
So if I can see, for example, I imagine that you have the map of the data lineage of Octopai. You don't need to navigate anymore, and you just ask question, and OpenAI knows how to process that image or to support something with that image in order to take an action. So software as a service, as you know, is becoming something else, I think. Will
Mhm.
become something else in a very quick time.
Yeah, totally agree. It's interesting
Yeah.
because I a lot of things that I used to ask my friends for or colleagues or just questions about things that maybe I should know that I'm just having a trouble searching for. I'll ask ChatGPT, I'll ask OpenAI, and I mean it's pretty transformational. I can't believe how many times it understands that. Even some obscure things like in ham radio, hey, I'm on for this frequency, like what antenna link do I need? And it will show you the calculations, and then it does the calculations for you. And it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty wild. I mean, I feel like I'm learning at a faster rate, so it's making me more
Right.
effective. And I could see with your product, I mean, being able to just make those people managing that data estate more effective is extremely powerful.
And I've seen this. I was attending the big data event in London, and I was showing Optimize to um, some was a head of data engineering in a big company in UK, and you want to see as a product someone like this,
Yeah.
and I've seen it live,
Yeah. This
and I'm
changes
looking.
everything.
Right. So just to give you the example, one of the use cases that we have there is to take a very complicated query. I don't know how many lines that you need to actually scan it, look at it, try to understand what it's about, and then imagine that you have Optimize, and this was the aha moment,
Hmm.
creating automatically a technical documentation explaining everything for a business user, what it is, what it does, what it's supposed to look for, actionable insight, actual insight, the filters. And I see that person looking like this. And another one, because another use case is fixing the query. So what about my job?
Hmm.
Okay. I was like, okay, this is an obstacle that I didn't think about, and now the product said how to manage this. So I started, so I become the hero, and instead of doing this, focus on being more productive, right? You're actually more
Yeah.
productive and focusing on strategic tasks like modernizing your infrastructure, not fixing a query, right?
Hmm.
So,
Exactly.
okay. So,
Exactly. I recently had somebody ask me for some data out of Azure DevOps, and I exported the data to a CSV, and one of the columns was in HTML. And this is not a difficult problem to solve. I'm like, I can solve this with a quick Python script. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, hey, what like how do I convert HTML to plain text? And I started searching and I'm like, you know what? GitHub Copilot, here's what I'm trying to do. Write me some code to, open up the CSV file and convert this particular column from HTML to CSV. And it wrote all the code for me. And then I ran it, and it was a throwaway script, right? And it took me 2 minutes to do this task, whereas I certainly could have done it in 15, 20 minutes, but it just made me quicker. And that coding would have added no value to my life. Like
exactly.
it was throwaway code. And so yeah, it just made me be able to get to the next thing, because writing that little script was not an important part of my job, but getting to the next thing was.
Right. I think that um, Azure OpenAI and general OpenAI for B2B software service products will change everything.
Hmm.
I'm trying to imagine how much, and I told you even the user interface should behave differently, should be interactive, it should be questions, it should be insights. No dashboards anymore. It's just a bunch of numbers that you once customized. It was important for you, and 3 months later, you don't care about it. You want something new. Uh, it's a it's it's becoming a proactive uh, solution. I think it's the key feature for every software as a service. You need to be proactive. You need to support that person to be actually productive for the strategic items and not for the
Hmm.
ones that I could do it. It take me 15 minutes. Is this my value in my role?
Right.
Seriously, probably not. So I would expect to have that paradigm for every new software as a service solution.
Hmm.
So I think roadmap wise, I think every product manager within the software as a service solution should have that as a critical mission,
Yeah.
because otherwise, it's old
You're going
old
to be
news, right?
exactly. You're going to be left behind.
Right.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit to a topic that you mentioned before, which I know you touched on scale a little bit. But I did want to ask you specifically, like how do you build for, I would say, scale, and then how do you build in a secure way? How do you think about those things as you build?
Um, it's funny that you mention it because since you are a data lineage uh, metadata management platform,
Mm,
imagine the traffic, imagine the numbers and sizing and scaling that we need to reach for
mhm.
enterprises. So
Yeah.
by default, by nature, by product, if we have landscapes with hundreds and more of systems and servers and so forth, imagine the load of the actual big data that we need to cope with. So microservices, containers, Kubernetes, the ability to recreate, I think I've mentioned that, replicate it very quickly, and
Mhm,
the Azure part is very important.
mhm,
Um, you know, going back to OpenAI, I could go for OpenAI, right? Why not? But and I looked at it, I said, same pricing, okay, fine. But what about security? Because I've been there.
mhm,
I've been there years ago. It's not, security is typically not a rational thing. It's a fear factor.
mhm,
How can I convince my customers that I'm not that I'm secured, right?
mhm.
How, and I have many protocols and checkpoint firewalls and so forth. But the way that we explain to ourselves that if I can explain this to myself, I will be able to explain to customers as well. So when I'm saying Microsoft Azure, you hear the checkbox click. Oh, you're secured. It's like it
Mhm,
happened right now, in a few days ago. Oh, security wise, you comply with all the protocols. And since we're not dealing with data, we could, but we don't,
mhm.
only with metadata, then the fear factor is going down. But when I'll go to the generative AI, it will start again,
Yeah.
because and this is why the to make sure that I don't have to deal with it too much, I will make sure that I'm taking the model inside within our environment, protected by Azure Security Services.
Mhm.
This is the way. So sometimes I'm saying it's Microsoft Security and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm, I'm good to go. And
Yeah.
I'm really simplifying it, but we have all the protocols in place. Scaling, we had to, we are moving right now, maybe how to call it, a more modern platform, infrastructure platform, to make sure that we are staying as an open garden, working with Microsoft as partners as well. Um, One of the key projects is moving to Apache Atlas, for example. And then
Mm.
in that sense, we're also making sure that we are scaling, because the data landscape could be sometimes endless, right? New technologies, the today technology will be tomorrow's legacies system. So we can't stay behind it. It's an endless job to make sure that we are providing the right coverage for our customers.
Yeah. And then are you available on the Azure Marketplace today? And if so, what did that journey look like?
So I didn't launch it yet. And maybe marketing is not here, not listening, but it's something that we need to learn. I worked very hard for it to ensure that we are having this offer in place. It's already public
Mm,
as a co-sell. So now that you mention it, again, Microsoft team engagement team, I think it's customer engagement or partner engagement. So I don't remember exactly the
mm,
naming. They were supporting me at least once a week, a meeting and emails, to make sure that as partners, we are getting there fast,
mhm,
uh, very reliable. Now that you mentioned it, I need to shoot an email and say thank you. But I have experience with others in my past, and I had to fight and struggle alone. So we have a co-sell market um, on Azure Marketplace, and it's out there already. So yes, the long answer is yes. I'm very proud of
Okay.
it, but it's there.
Excellent. Anything else you wanted to make sure that you mentioned that I didn't touch upon?
Um, So now that we mentioned the Microsoft Azure Marketplace, we are going next to be a transactable
perfect.
solution. So I'm pressuring the team here to get on board with it. They are on board with it, but there is some bureaucracy around it always. But I'm saying this as partners. This is the next phase for us to become transactable on Microsoft Azure Place. And I'm saying this from a software as a service perspective. What I would like as a customer, especially if I'm already a Microsoft shop, in that sense, if I can purchase Octopai as a service on Azure Marketplace,
Yep.
and I have already a consumption contract in place, just subscription, and I'm there.
Why not?
Why not? It's very simple. So definitely, this is the next phase. That's it.
The future sounds exciting.
Yes, indeed.
Perfect. Well, Zinette, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about Octopai and all of the great insights around AI and how you built the solution and brought it to market. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jason. Very nice chat. Happy to share more. So hopefully, we'll have another chat in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason.